What if Tapu Wayway was in Gen 1 OU? Welcome to the final part of my What if the Tapus were in Gen 1 4-part series. And what we have now is the last, but most certainly least, of all the Tapus. Not in terms of design, and not in terms of how it plays in actual competitive. Tapu Wayway is actually my favorite of the Tapus. But in terms of how it would do in Gen 1, it is by far the most... I don't want to say bad, because it's not bad. Like, it's... Unlike Tapu Bulu, I don't think it's scared of being in borderline, but at the same time, it is by far the most boring of them, and also the one you have the least reason to use. I'm sure a lot of you were thinking, oh, it's a psychic type. Psychic types are great in Gen 1, so it's probably going to be great. But here's the thing. This might sound like a hot take, but it's really not. Psychic as an offensive type is not very good in Gen 1 OU. Because if you really think about it, Gen 1 OU is filled with bulky psychic types that, yeah, they spam psychic, but it's not because of any offensive reasons, it's just for a special drop. So being a 130 psychic Pokemon, your main stab move is gonna be resisted by a huge portion of the metagame, and every single one of those other psychic types has something else it can use other than using psychic. Starmie is just one of the best bulky water types ever made, and along with psychic, it has recover, thunder wave, incredibly fast, bulk beam coverage, etc. AlGazam's even faster, and it also has recover. Slowbro has amnesia, and Jinx has, its nice type, Stab Wizard, and even Waffle Kiss. Even Hypno, a Pokemon in borderline, has more niches than Tapu Wayway, since it also has Thunder Wave, Hypnosis, and it can hit sorta hard with Headbutt, but you're mostly just trying to go for a flinch. And yeah, that last one is by far the worst out of all of them, but it's still more than what Tapu Wayway does. So what does Tapu Wayway do that sets it apart from all of these other psychic types? It definitely has nothing to do with the fairy type, because like I said for the other 3 videos, the fairy type is non-existent both offensively and defensively. But even if the poison weakness was relevant, obviously it's a psychic type, it can handle that. So the one thing Tapu Wayway does that the others don't is Nature's Madness exactly, which I've allowed all the other Tapus to use, so obviously Tapu Wayway can use it as well. So it can basically take away half of the HP of every single Pokemon, which, if that's the only thing that can set it apart, the Tapu Wayway is going to struggle a lot. Because, here's the question I want to ask you. Who does Tapu Wayway use Nature's Madness on? Because with the other 3, the move is a lot better. Tapu Koko is incredibly fast. It hits incredibly hard on both the physical and special side. So it is always, capable of, either doing a lot of damage or something before it faints, or it can just threaten to 2-hit KO everything in the game. Same for Tapu Bulu. Especially with a Sword Stance up, practically nothing can really survive both a Nature's Madness and a Hyper Beam. Tapu Wayway is incredibly bulky, and being a super bulky water type that can just delete half of the opponent's HP is really good. It helps you significantly, with your battles. But the same just can't be said for Tapu Wayway. It has Hyper Beam, but with 85 attack, and not to mention with just its move slot, it's not worth it. And it doesn't have Thunder Wave. And the Pokemon that you want to use Nature's Madness on, what would that be exactly? probably the special Pokemon. Because looking at your stats, 130 special attack, 115 special defense. Obviously, you want to switch into, special moves, tank them, and then try to spam Psychic to lower the opponent's special. Or you could try to go for Nature's Madness. But remember all of those Psychic types I mentioned? Other than Hypno, and even then Hypno technically has Rest, those other Pokemon have Recovery. Same with Chansey. So Nature's Madness pretty much does nothing to a Pokemon that can use Recover. Now I forgot to mention it earlier, but Exeggutor is, just another example of a bulky Psychic type that has more to do. And even Jinx, because I'm pretty sure most people use Rest as Jinx's fourth option. And even with that matchup, Tapu Wayway has no way of really hurting Jinx anyways. So, if Nature's Madness is bad against the special Pokemon, how does it do against the physical ones? And Tapu Wayway has Reflect, and Psychic does hit pretty hard. So against those physical Pokemon, especially Tauros and Snorlax, Nature's Madness is pretty good. And Psychic is pretty good. In fact, both are actually very similar, damage range for Tauros. Pretty sure Psychic does 46% and has a chance to crit, same with, Special Drop. So it might be better than Nature's Madness, it just depends. But even with those, physical Pokemon, as you can see here, Tapu Wayway has base 75 defense, which is a big issue. Because with Reflect, it's more than capable of taking out the, physical, normal types and Rhydon. But it's so badly does not actually want to switch into them. It doesn't want to switch into a Body Slam or an Earthquake because it's gonna hurt. And especially for Body Slam, Tapu Wayway is absolutely terrified by Paralysis. Unlike other bulky Psychic types, like AlGazam or Starmie, who can just recover off the damage, Wayway is not so lucky. It has Rest, I'm pretty sure, but you just don't have room for it. So if you're paralyzed, not only are you just slower than, everything, which means that the special Pokemon have more opportunities to beat you in a 1v1. The physical Pokemon have more chances to hit you. Hell, even Rhydon will probably beat you in a 1v1 if you are paralyzed. And what does Tapu Wayway even do? Nothing really. So I guess we'll go into the moveset, because even though it sounds really bad, I still think Wayway would stay in OU, and it's technically better than Boo-Woo. However, I do feel like you would have more of a reason to use Boo-Woo. But if we go with the moveset here, outside of Nature's Madness, obviously there's Psychic, which is a must-have. It still hits hard, and special drops are still pretty nice. Honestly, I still think Psychic is a bad offensive type, but Psychic itself is, I think, actually very similar to C-Swiss Edge and Stone Axe. Because for those two moves, and Psychic here, they're more so just better status moves in a way. Because for the most part, C-Swiss Edge and Stone Axe's base power and type do not matter at all. You would always use the move just because it sets up entry hazards. And that's basically how it is for Psychic here. Its actual base power and the actual type it is irrelevant. You're only using it because you have a 30% chance, or no, a 33% chance to lower the opponent's special defense, or just their special in Gen 1. Which, that's always good, don't get me wrong. But, honest to, Arceus' sake, why would you use Wayway? If you're building a team of Gen 1 Pokemon, every team needs at least one good Psychic type. Why would you ever use Wayway over the others? Even over Hypno. People play to win. And what is your win con with Wayway exactly? Wayway does have at least one saving grace that keeps it from just being in BL hell. And that is Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt with a really good 130 special attack means that against some of the psychic types, i.e. Starmie and Swellbro, you can actually beat them in the 1v1. And this is the one thing keeping Wayway from just being completely mid. And admittedly, Starmie is a great Pokemon, but even with Starmie, it still has Recover and Thunder Wave. So, even though Wayway wins 90% of the time, it's not 100%. Not to mention, with it being Thunderbolt exactly, if Starmie paralyzes Wayway, it can survive a single non-crit Thunderbolt, and even with a crit, it might be able to survive. And then, Starmie can just switch in the Exeggutor or Ryon, which could just very easily take care of Wayway afterwards. Wayway, despite being very tanky on the special side, and basically speed tying with Jinx, so being pretty fast, it doesn't really like to switch into anything outside of Psychics and maybe Blizzards, but even then, that's incredibly risky. So, yeah. The last move, like, you have others, but I think Reflect is by far the best one, as this is the only real reason why you have even a decent matchup against the normal types that aren't Chansey. But even with, like, Reflect up, I think normal types would prefer to spam Body Slam anyways, because like I said, Paralysis is very good against Wayway, and for, like, Snorlax, but not Snorlax, Tauros, it might just crit anyways, so it's probably gonna win the 1v1. So, I might be a little too harsh on Wayway, but so many of you guys' like comments for these other videos were you guys expecting Wayway to be good, and I'm gonna be real. Sometimes I feel like you guys, I don't know, like sometimes I just kind of feel like a lot of you don't actually like watch the full video all the way through. So I just kind of need to really get my point across that this is not like how it is in other games. There's no Psychic Surge, no Psychic Terrain. Tapu Wayway doesn't have Fairy Stab. It is not the same Pokemon that you've seen in the, Gen 7 onwards. This thing will struggle a lot, and it's not going to be the juggernaut that you know it as. I still think it's better than Tapu Bulu, but I have a feeling if, like, when I eventually do a Generation Jumble on this, because I do think the Tapus will be their own season at some point, but I have a feeling that the only ones that will actually be good at the end of the day will be Coco and Wayway. But let's just go into the replays now, because, like, admittedly, Wayway's going to look a lot better here, but I'll explain why it's not as good as it seems as we go on. Starting off with the boy himself, Horos, and even without Reflect, it tanked it a lot better than I thought it would, if I'm being completely honest here. But as you can see here, even with, like, Reflect, and it, like, winning the matchup, it barely won. Tauros almost beat it, and Tauros got unlucky and didn't get a single crit, and it didn't paralyze the Lele. So, could go either way, but it's one where Tauros usually is in the more favorable position, because either the Wayway already has chip damage, or, like, it doesn't want to actually switch into Tauros. It does better against Snorlax, like, I'll be honest. Amnesia Wax is pretty annoying, because I would imagine Amnesia would eventually just, outdo the special drops for, Psychic, but it could be wrong. And against physical Snorlax, you're faster, so you're not as scared, but it can still be very annoying. It's a Snorlax, so almost every single thing in the game is a could go either way against it. And then you have special drops for Chansey, but because Chansey can paralyze you, it's most likely going to win the long game no matter what. Maybe if it's Bullet Beam Chansey, you will actually win that, but I feel like Seismic Toss is almost always going to be, more popular. And with that, Chansey can paralyze you, it can be faster than you, and while special drops could be annoying, with you being paralyzed and with Chansey having great longevity, most likely it's just gonna last long enough to where sooner or later you will lose turns to Paralysis, And when that happens, like, if Chansey gets a single free turn, it's basically guaranteed to win the 1v1. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. It's an unwinnable matchup. And AlGazam is not much better. In fact, in some ways, it's debatably worse. Because it can fight back with its own psychics that can lower special. Now, these two can both crit a lot. AlGazam crits more. But I guess that is something worth going into. Same with the Chansey matchup. If Wayway does get crits, it does a little bit better. Or actually, wait, against Chansey, it doesn't. Because Wayway would prefer to have, like, 4 special drops or something on Chansey before it really do good. But by AlGazam and Chansey, the matchup against Wayway is basically identical. Since, while pairwise, Chansey is faster anyways. Both of these can just outlast Wayway. So, there's not much Wayway can really do. And I don't think Hyper Beam would really be that good. Because yes, it can do a lot more damage to them. Not only are they still faster, so they recover, but what do you get rid of for Hyper Beam? Like, most likely Reflect. And if you get rid of Reflect, good luck winning the Tauros matchup, or even the Snorlax matchup. And yes, Cloyster, like, you do good here. It's a benefit of having Thunderbolt, which is why I think Wayway would still see OU viability. Granted, Starmie is just a better Psychic type with Thunderbolt, but having 2, I can see being good. So maybe I'm being too harsh, but I don't really know. Nature's Madness is annoying for Exeggutor, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Or, depending on the set. Admittedly though, I think out of all the Psychic types, outside of Starmie and Swelbro, this is probably the one where it's the most even, I guess you can say. Like, granted, Wayway has to get really lucky with, what's it called? Sweep Luck. Not to mention, the Exeggutor doesn't really, it probably doesn't have Leech Seed or Mega Drain. But, most of the time, Exeggutor is going to win the matchup. But considering Exeggutor is good for being incredibly bulky, if you're, doing, like, this amount of damage to it, I would say you didn't really waste a move swap by including Wayway. It's no one's surprise, Wayway does really good against Gengar, but the threat of Hypnosis and Explosion is still really annoying. But it's definitely manageable. And then with Jolteon, like, it's probably better to go for Psychic because of special drops. This is by far the most, like, boring matchup here, because it's literally just the most optimal thing to do. It's just both of them attacking each other. I don't think it's worth it for Jolteon to go for Thunder Wave, because I feel like, since the type of Wayway is always gonna go for, Psychic, you would rather just spam Thunderbolt and try to get those crits out as fast as possible. Like, okay, it's probably I could go either way, but considering how often Jolteon, like, crits, I would rather put this in bad matchup. But you guys could probably convince me otherwise in the comments. Or maybe you can, who knows. Jinx is basically unwinnable. Or no, I think it just is. There's a speed tie, but Jinx doesn't care about your Psychic or your Thunderbolt. So you have, like, Nature's Madness. But like I said, most Jinx sets will use Rest. And if Tapu Wayway's put to sleep, Jinx can probably find a good opportunity to, go for Rest. So even though Tapu Wayway got especially unlucky in this replay, I would argue it doesn't really matter in the first place, because Jinx is just going to win no matter what you do. And then for Ryon, it's a funny matchup for sure, because with Substitute and Body Slam, Ryon can potentially win. And that's both funny, but also very sad. Like, if you're a Psychic type, and the Ryon matchup is a could go either way, yeah, there's a problem there. And Wayway has to go for Reflect. Otherwise, like, it's still a very dangerous game, where both can 3-hit KO the other. Obviously, it's much less risky for Tapu Wayway than it is for Ryon, but you always kind of have to go for Reflect, because otherwise, you just become like, otherwise you just take too much damage from Ryon. But if you're an experienced player, like I assume the one here was, hiding behind a substitute, fishing for paralysis, Ryon can still hold its own. So, not what I expected, but it's funny. And this one, you can all imagine how it goes. Paralysis is a death sentence, but Tapu Wayway can crit a lot. So even though Swellbro eventually becomes faster and can build up its special, Tapu Wayway has more than enough time to fish for those crits, which it'll probably get eventually. It's not guaranteed to work. Sometimes Swellbro will be able to get high enough special and beat you, but it's very rare. So most of the time you have absolutely nothing to fear. And then with Starmie, it's not as good as the Swellbro matchup, but still pretty good. If you lose a few turns to Paralysis, Starmie might be able to win. But most likely in this situation, the Starmie will just switch out. And if the Starmie just paralyzes Wayway, it's already done its job. But if it's forced to, it can, well, stall long enough for it to get crit by Thunderbolt, if we're being completely honest. But it's, yeah, no, there's no way of like really getting around it. It's a pretty good matchup for Wayway, no matter what. And last but not least, we got Zapdos. Zapdos can hit Wayway pretty hard on both the physical and special side. It can paralyze Wayway, and Wayway its only real hope is like getting special drops. Like nothing else you can really do. And Thunderbolt, for a Pokemon with 115 special defense, hits pretty hard. So, like, Wayway can do a lot of damage to Zapdos. So maybe it's a could go either way. But I feel like it's not. I feel like it's more so a bad matchup, in my opinion. But maybe I'm wrong about that. But here is the tier list. Yeah, it's I've seen better. I've seen a lot better. And for a Psychic type, I am very disappointed that there's so many things that are unwinnable. Maybe these could go either way to be nice. And also because that might just be where they accurately goes. I'm not sure. But in terms of how I would rank the Tapus, it would be Boo at the bottom. Because even though it's more unique and has like a better or has an actual win con, it is just too frail to really be used effectively in OU. Tapu Wayway would be the third best. And with Wayway, it's like it can do an alright job at being a special tank. But for the most part, there's so many other things that are better than it. So I think it most likely would end up in borderline just like Boo. Or Boo ends up in underused and Wayway ends up in BO. Tapu Fini is the second best. I know there's like one or two of you that think it would be better than Coco. Absolutely not. Coco is faster, can get rid of its weakness with Reflect, and overall just has so many more options. But Fini isn't bad. It's pretty good. And just being like a pure tank, it's like we don't have enough of those in Gen 1, in my opinion. So it would be pretty good. And then Tapu Koko would just be genuinely amazing. It pretty much gets rid of its one weakness. It hits hard with both Hyper Beam, Nature's Madness, Critical Thunderbolts, can paralyze everything, has Jolteon speed. There's practically nothing that can really go wrong for Koko. So that's pretty cool. And I had a lot of fun with this 4-part series. Tomorrow's video is going to be really cool. It's going to be me going over what if Terrestrialization was in Gen 1 OU. So prepare to see I would imagine to be a longer video than normal. Just me trying to find what the best Terra type would be. So be on the lookout for that. What do you think about Wayway? Do you think I was being too harsh on it? Or do you think that I'm right and it just doesn't have what it takes to, really stand up for itself in Gen 1 OU? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.